Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today we are going to talk about modifying some decks that have been in my purgatory box for quite some time. Let's go ahead and take a look at each of these decks and talk a little bit about what my thoughts are in terms of modifying them. These are decks that I'm just not going to work with in the current state that they are. So I thought, maybe a mod might save these decks. Okay, so we're gonna talk about these two first because this is going to be a pretty easy mod. Now, I'm not gonna actually do the mods of these decks on camera, most likely, because they're gonna be pretty straightforward deck modifications. And if you wanna see how I go about the process of modifying a deck, I have many tutorials on my channel. I will leave those linked in the description box below for you. Now this is, I've still got this deck combined into the two decks, the Work Your Light Oracle and the Starseed Oracle. I've got them combined into basically one deck. What's in the Work Your Light is all the cards that I did like after I did my whole kind of combining this into the what I called the Light Seed Oracle for a while, which I did use quite a bit. And I have a video again on that as well, which I'll leave linked in the description box below for you, as well as links where you can purchase these decks if you'd like to pick them up for yourselves. All of that will be in the description box. So the ones that I actually was using are over here in this box. And in this box, and again, I mentioned this in the Purgatory video, but in this box is all the cards that I either didn't like the artwork or I didn't like the message on the card, or I felt like that energy was already reflected in a card that I had already picked to keep. So I ended up with basically half and half. Maybe even a few more cards in these are the cards I'm not working with. I'm gonna leave this over here so I just know which side is which. Now, just real quick recap, as I mentioned in my Purgatory video, I have kind of determined that I don't really resonate with the way Rebecca Campbell approaches her decks and her process on the whole. I'm just not a fan of her work. So when I look at these have beautiful Danielle Noel artwork, who I am a fan of and who I do have several decks by. And I have even ordered her new upcoming Ocean Oracle, which was kind of the key flip for me between not wanting to work with these decks anymore because I don't resonate with Rebecca Campbell. I kind of was like, I don't think I need these because I don't really like what's on the cards most of the time. They feel a bit out there. This card I probably am going to hang on to just because it has an orca in it and it does say Whale and Orca Elders, which I love. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with it, but that's one that I kind of I want to hang on to and keep. The thing is these are both mass market decks, right? They're pretty inexpensive, and at this point I wouldn't even be able to sell them, like to rehome them for less than you could buy them new for the cost of shipping, because shipping has gotten so outrageously expensive that it's actually a lot of times cheaper to just buy a deck new on Amazon than it is to try to rehome a deck and ship it out to someone else, particularly when it's an inexpensive mass market deck. So generally what I end up doing in this case is I either end up donating these decks like these, or I end up doing a modification or using them in creative projects. But what I thought I would do is actually take off the titles. So on the cards that I really like the artwork. Sorry, forgot that kind of key point there. So there are certain cards in here, like this one I love, but I'm probably gonna keep it exactly as it is, although I'm gonna cut off this Share Your Song, Frequency of Sound, Diving Deep. That's the kind of stuff that doesn't resonate with me. However, the idea of Whale and Orca Elders is very key to my personal practice and things that I do on a regular basis, as Orca is one of my guiding animals and well energy is something that I really, really connect to. So that one I'm going to keep out, and it might just end up being like an altar card in my Orca space or something along those lines. Kind of my thought process with this particular deck. Like I love this Void. I love this Initiation. Some of them I'm going to have to like really take my time and look at. So it's not something I'm going to do on camera because otherwise we'd be here for a long time. Like this one, I really like. Yeah, I'll go through them first because a lot of these I don't really mind some of the keywords, but it's the language of the way the key phrases are written that after a while I'm just like, it doesn't really work for me. But like, you know, this is a beautiful one. Like I love this image and I love the idea of soul family. And I mean, calling your tribe, you don't have to do it alone. Like I get that, but I don't really need that. I could get more out of this artwork and just the title of soul family than I would with anything else. Okay, so that's that one. That's the plan for this one. And we'll see at the end of this whole experience whether it actually saves the deck for me. So the next one is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. Now this again is another deck that I've talked about many times. So again, with the Purgatory video, I went through in detail my issues with this deck, which is really like, I absolutely love the minors. My issues with this deck are with Major Arcana because, as I mentioned in that video, the numbers actually matter to me, and when they're backwards, it changes the association that I have with the card, and it does not work for the way that I read tarot. I appreciate what she was trying to do with this. I appreciate the journey from kind of the destructive world that we live in now to a more cohesive, harmonious, interconnected version of the world. I'm all on board for that, but the numbers matter to me, and they matter in how I read because it matters based on my foundational structure of tarot that I read with. And so when I come across those, it totally ruins the reading for me. I'll be perfectly honest. So I got lots of suggestions on like, you could, I could just like white out the numbers on the Major Arcana. I could chop the titles off altogether and use it as like an oracle deck. And I could, you know, put sticky over them, renumber them myself. There's all kinds of things I could do for something like this, right? The easiest thing for me to do would probably be to just take a piece of maybe correction tape or something like that and just put it right over the number and then write my own on there. That would probably be the easiest thing to do. Now here's the other thing with this deck. I have a real hard time working with this deck. It has very cardboardy cardstock, and again we're back to if I can't shuffle a deck, that really like interrupts my whole being able to use it thing. I definitely can't riffle shuffle it this way. It's very unwieldy for me to try to shuffle it overhand. It's very large. It's actually quite heavy because it's like, it's not cardstock. It's not like playing cardstock with a core. It's just cardboard, or some sort of version of that, right? I don't think there's a core in here, like a traditional playing card core is what I'm getting at. And so it feels like cardboard to me, and that's not my favorite. In general, when I get cardboardy decks like this, I don't like them. If you saw my April reflections video, you saw what I did to the mass market Dreamkeeper Tarot because it's that US Games cardboardy, and I basically beat it up to try and break it in. But this deck is huge. It's like Oracle size, but it's 78 cards, and you know, I don't like the card stock, and so there's other issues beyond just the numbering. So my thought is, because I adore the artwork, and as much as I appreciate what Phyllis Curott has done in the book, and I am a huge fan of her work. Her book, Witchcrafting, was one of the very first witchy type books that I read oh so many years ago when I was first exploring different paths to you know, the path that I had grown up in. And so her books and her work will forever hold a special place in my heart. I will always keep the copy of the book that goes with this, which is another reason why I don't want to rehome this deck, is because I do want to keep that book. I do really like her approach to things in a general sense. But for me, that's separate from this deck, right? Because I have a sort of, in a sense, a personal relationship with her work. I have a history with her work. And so I want to keep that intact and not have that change my opinion of her work in any shape or way, shape, or form, simply because I'm having trouble working with this deck. But I absolutely adore this artwork. I think it's beautiful. It's artwork by, I think, Danielle Barlow, I think is the artist's name. Hopefully that's correct. I'll definitely look that up. But so what I'm thinking of doing, because I don't like the number system the way it is, I absolutely love the artwork, but the deck is too big for me. I think I'm just going to trim it down small and make it an oracle deck. And yes, that does mean that I'm going to lose a little bit of the artwork. I'm going to try to keep it like probably just maybe cut like right above the titles, and then maybe see if I can just trim it down a little bit on the sides and the top on every card and just get it a little bit smaller. Because here's the thing, no matter how beautiful this deck is, I'm not working with it. I won't put it in my hands because it's difficult for me to work with. And again, we're back to the same old story that I've been singing for a month now of, if I can't physically work with a deck, it doesn't really serve me any purpose in my collection. So that's where I'm at. So I think that's what I'm going to do with this deck. I'm going to basically chop it down and make it a beautiful intuitive deck. These have two very distinct energies to them. They're very opposite ends of the spectrum. This feels very grounded in the earthly realm. This feels very much in that cosmic star seed kind of energy, where this feels very much tapped into like Mother Earth and nature-based paths. So I kind of dig that about both of these decks, that it really does go both, you know, we have both ends of the spectrum here, which really does, my practice actually does embody both ends of the spectrum and kind of a little bits of places here in between. So I feel pretty confident in the modifications, or the planned modifications for these decks. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get started on those. I'm not going to do the whole mod with me and share the whole process, because that would be overwhelming, and this is a lot, like this is a lot of cards. Look at this. That's a lot of cards for me to be working with, and if I'm trying to turn on the camera and do all that at the same time, it's going to take me forever. So as it is, I'm guessing this is going to be a several day process for me. But I just kind of wanted to like do this little introduction, jump in, see, you know, talk a little bit about what I'm going to be doing with these decks. We'll come back and check in and see how they all come together as I work my way through this process to try and see if a deck mod will save these decks. Okay, so I thought I'd do just a little check-in. Obviously, you can see I'm working on the Light Seed Oracle, the combined Work Your Light and Starseed Oracle. And I've created a couple of piles here. So let's kind of just talk about, in case this is something that you're interested in doing, or you're just interested in my process, kind of what I did so far to try and kind of curtail these 80 plus cards. So I pulled out the yes and no cards, and I had them set up on my desk, and I basically made two piles to start with. No cards, which are cards that I didn't like the artwork, or like, it's not that I didn't like the artwork, I should say. It's that when I looked at the artwork, like not paying attention to the keywords, but just looking at the artwork, did I get any sort of a intuitive hit from that? Did I get an intuitive message? Some of these, the ones on the top here, are actually I pulled out from these other piles. So all of these, in fact, I pulled out from these other piles. They were originally in the yes pile. But some of these, like a lot of them, it's just, it's really repetitive imagery. And so I'm like, I don't really get anything specific out of it other than like it's a person in front of a temple with a bunch of star background and mountains and whatnot, right? That's sort of a repetitive imagery that we see in Danielle Noel decks. I apologize for the lighting because the sun is like going in and out of behind all the clouds. So that's kind of what I started with. Basically, I went through every card looking at it going, does this artwork speak to me? Is there something within the card that is giving me a intuitive hit that is different than every other card that looks the same, right? Because when you kind of start, and this is not a dig at Danielle Noel's artwork, because I am a fan of her artwork and I do like her style, but when you do have 80 plus cards of this, they do kind of all still start looking the same. So I really just pulled out those cards in the yes pile to start with that I was like, yeah, I see something in this artwork, right? I see something that is different, slightly different from this card to this card, right? The yes pile started out as a big pile with all of these cards, including a few that have ended up over here. And the yes pile was, I like the artwork, and as well as I like the artwork and the title. So none of the key phrases really resonate with me, as I mentioned. So I was really just looking at the title. So this pile here, this actually quite small pile here, represents cards that I like the artwork, but the title either I didn't care for it or it didn't provide anything extra to the card. Like this, if you take away the Mars energy, the Great Severing, that title and artwork do not mean anything to me, putting those two together. And provided that I'm going to take that off, then I'm just left with the Great Severing, which means nothing in terms of this artwork, right? So then what I ended up doing, going through the cards that I did like the titles and artwork. And I kind of realized as I was going through this, like there's kind of three things going on here in the selection of cards that I have. So, and the largest one is actually, I think this one, although these two can be put together. So this selection of cards represents things that kind of relate to the idea of the soul family. So I put that one on top because we have soul family, we have star mother, we have star ancestors, star keepers. So again, these all represent, these three piles all have artwork that I like. So now I'm looking at the keywords or the titles on them. And so these are like, they have titles. So these are like people and places, so to speak. So we have like Messenger, Star Brothers, Akasha. The Age of Light is kind of like an overall idea of, you know, what the soul family is trying to cultivate. And I have a couple of those in there too, like the Age of Light, Birthing a New Age, Lost Lands, Inner Temple, you know, the Gathering, the Keepers, the Children, and then we have a few things that relate specifically to the idea of soul family. So these selection of cards represent the soul family and the energies that we find within that context of the soul family. So that's kind of like one little grouping there of cards. And I'm kind of thinking of like, if I put these together, I can almost make like a system out of these cards. So then we have these cards, which again, these are all cards I like the artwork and the titles. I just don't like the subtitles underneath. These cards all represent like kind of actionable things, more of a key phrase, less of a title. So it's like, you're not for everyone. Forge, don't follow, break the chain, deep cellular healing, loosen your grip. These are all like things that you can do. So it's kind of like actionable steps, you know, take baby steps, take a break, that kind of thing. So we have actionable steps. And then here we have a selection of, these are kind of just like, oops, that one should be in there. Sorry, there's weight. Titles, not actionable steps. So we have things like the crumbling, the void, the initiation. Oops, that one should definitely be in there. So a couple of things that are just like kind of placey type things or titles. You know, protection, perspective, those could kind of all be over here too, but it was kind of like a single keyword thing. So what I'm thinking is like, I can kind of put these two together And now I've kind of made an oracle that actually has a system within it. There's like a reason, a rhyme and a reason to the cards that I've curated here. So I have like actionable steps and kind of an embodied energies, like the energy of the void, the energy of initiation, the energy of protection. Basically what I did was I created 2 sections of a deck where these all relate to people and energies within the idea of the soul family, and these all are kind of like how you go out and create that in the world or work with that energy in the world. So I finished the mods on both decks. Now there wasn't a ton of difference in the Work Your Light Starseed combined oracle deck, which I call the Light Seed oracle. There wasn't much difference in that, but the Witch's Wisdom looks quite a bit different. So let's go ahead and just take a look at this one first. Now, what I did end up doing is edging it also in 2 different colors, and you can see I have them kind of split here because what I did was I took all of those cards that were kind of those action cards, things to do as relating to the space or the starseed cosmic connection kind of energy. And I edged that one in the Tombow 291. So in this kind of blue aqua color here, which I was trying to find a color that would match both backs, but wasn't really pink or purple because I feel like there's a lot of pink and purple in these decks. And then on the other pile, which was the pile of, you know, kind of energies, peoples, and places types of thing, I did kind of this green color, and that was the Tombow 243. I'll leave those both linked in the description box below in case anybody is interested. But that way, if I want to keep them separate, as in use one in pull cards from each pile, I certainly can because they're in different colors, so that helps me to distinguish between them. Or if I want to mix them together and then pull them back apart later on, again, I can use those color edgings to kind of help me do that. They are fairly close, so if I mix them all together, you know, they definitely blend in. But if I really sat and looked at them, I could sparse them back out. So kind of like my thinking with this little modified deck, and just so you can see, I've just taken the those key phrases off the bottom. So it's just the titles and the artwork now. If I decide I don't like the titles, I can chop those off next. This was a really quick and easy mod. In fact, modifying both of these decks only took me really one evening. So or late afternoon into the evening. So I just chopped the key phrases off this deck. So let's go ahead and pull a card, and I'll show you kind of how I envision using this. So I got my whale and orca elders. That's just awesome. So this would be how I'm kind of envisioning this. Sorry, that's my tray for my tarot decks. My working decks is casting a pretty big shadow right now. So kind of how I envision using this is pulling a kind of person or place or energy as that's who's speaking to me, right? That's who's guiding this reading. And then I'm using the cards that I chose for kind of those action steps to give me the advice about it. Now, I thought this might be really cool to also pull in tarot because I often use these decks with my Danielle Noel decks. Here we have the whale and orca elders are giving me the message of trust your path. So I think that's pretty great. These cards are so light, they kind of blend in with my table. I'm kind of curious, kind of fun, excited to play with that and see how this works, to see if, you know, this type of a thing, and I just kind of keep them, if I keep them back to back like this, it creates a split where like the backs are facing each other. It creates a split, and I can real easily see which deck is which. But you can see here that I've just cut those key phrases off the bottom, and I think that actually helps because it really draws even more attention to the artwork. And now I just have that little key phrase at the bottom to cue me into the energy. So I'm kind of envisioning that for working with this deck. And then, like I said, maybe adding some tarot into it. So I think that That'll be fun. I put all the extra cards that I didn't use in the Work Your Light box. Honestly, I've recycled both the guidebooks because they're nothing I'm going to be using. And so I've saved these, the Starseed Oracle, to put these ones in this box because, I mean, this is kind of a neat little box, and this will sit up on my shelf with my other Danielle Noel deck. So it'll be sitting upright, so that'll be fine. Just have to remember not to grab it from the top because otherwise it pulls it out. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that one came out. I'll be curious to see how it actually works, you know, kind of working with it at that kind of more intricate level, using the kind of system that I've created within it, and then maybe pairing it with some tarot as well. So that's that one. Now let's take a look at the Witch's Wisdom. So basically I took a huge chunk off the bottom of these cards. Now I did cut into a little bit of the artwork, but I'm okay with that. Because I didn't cut off anything important really. But you can see here, this is one of the titles that I cut off, and it is definitely, you know, a good, I don't know, ½ inch or so, maybe more, that I cut off this deck. And now it's kind of squared. But the really great thing is I can actually shuffle it now. I can actually keep it in my hands and shuffle it. I still can't riffle shuffle it. Being a shorter deck, it's even stiffer now. So there's even less give to riffle shuffle it. Like it's real cardboardy now. But it's a really cool kind of almost square deck now. And this is a deck without all of the titles on it. I'm just planning on using this one as an intuitive oracle, just pulling a card and, you know, letting whatever message comes through come through for me. Some of the cards I do, you know, I still remember what it was, right? Like this was the Rebirth card. We saw the Priestess there a moment ago. This is the Shaman. And so that's fine. I can layer that in if I happen to remember the titles or something for them. But it's really just now an intuitive reader for me. And so I'm looking forward to kind of working with this one. Again, I'm feeling like this would be a really good oracle now to pair with my tarot decks and to see kind of how those will go together. And I'm thinking of just like pulling one of these and as kind of like the central energy or central focus, and really tapping into it in an intuitive way, and then layering tarot around it, because this deck just didn't work for me as a tarot, and that's fine. Not every deck is going to work for me, but I do really love the artwork. I mean, it's just beautiful. So now I can take it and I can still use it, and I can use it in a way that works for me. I can read it very intuitively, and I can still work with these powerful images. I'm just not tied into the structure of tarot with it now. So I'm actually quite pleased with the way that that one turned out. I edged it in this yellow color to kind of, you know, match that star on the back. And that was in the Tombow 991. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how it came out. Like obviously the backs are off-centered because I cut a pretty big chunk off the bottom, but that really doesn't bother me any. I can definitely tell which way is up. Again, I don't read reversals anyway, but using it as an oracle, it's totally fine for it to be, I probably shouldn't have put these ones away. It's totally fine for it to be a non-reversible deck as an oracle anyway. So there we have it. Did the modifying these decks save these decks from the purgatory box? I think definitely for now they have. I'm kind of actually excited to work with this one again because I feel like I can tap more into that artwork now, and I'm not distracted by the messages or anything on the cards. I like that I've created a little system within it. I'm real excited to try that in readings. And this one I think is going to function really well as an intuitive oracle for me. So again, I'm excited to try that one as well too. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.